My list, I certainly will.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay. Right, so what I'd like to do is to get everyone to introduce themselves, please. As Marion, our legal officer, has just said, it would be helpful if people could have their microphones switched off unless they're speaking, and also make use of the hands raised function. Hopefully everyone's familiar with that. So we'll start introductions by the other two councillors, please.
Hi, I'm Councillor Belinda Garcia. I'm the councillor for the Revel in Binley Woods.
Hello, my name's Del Keeling. I'm the councillor for Admirals and Corston.
Thank you. Could we move on to Rugby Borough Council officers, please, starting with you, Marion?
Apologies. I'm Marion Allen. I'm the senior legal officer who will be clerk in this meeting, also taking notes. So please bear in mind that I will be trying to take a record of hearing. Thank you.
My name's John McTurnan. I'm a licensing officer for Rugby Borough Council, overseeing today's meeting and hopefully sharing any documents you require to see in regards to the application today and answering any questions. Thank you.
My name's Emma Payne and I'm the trainee licensing officer.
Okay, Marion, did you want to lead for the for all our visitors, please, so to get them in an order that you can cope with in terms of making your notes?
Thank you. The chair will be shortly outlining the procedure that we will follow in this meeting. To assist me in making notes and actually keeping us in some sort of order, and the chair as well, keeping in order. If we could introduce ourselves, if I can actually name people and then you could introduce yourself. I believe we have Mr. Gregory here.
Yes, good afternoon, councillors. I'm the solicitor representing the applicant today.
And Mr. Gregory, I believe you have some members of the applicants and support. If you could ask them to introduce themselves as well, please.
That's right. First of all, Thomas Palmer.
Yeah, hi there. My name's Thomas Palmer. I'm the finance director for Country House Weddings, which owns Bolton Hall Limited.
And Nick Bramer. I think you might be on mute, Nick.
There we go. Hi, my name's Nick Bramer. I am the marketing director and co-owner of Country House Weddings. Thank you.
And we also have Mike Stigwood, who authored the noise report, who will not speak unless you have any questions on that report.
Thank you for that. I believe that we have Mr. John Payne, is that correct, who's representing some of the residents of Borden?
Yes, indeed. Good afternoon.
And the other members that I have, is it Thomas Marsh? Thomas Palmer? No, Thomas Marsh, sorry, I'm looking at the screen, my apologies. Do we have Thomas Marsh?
Yes, indeed. So this is I'm Thomas Marsh. I'm a resident close by to the hall, and my wife Felicity Marsh is also here.
Thank you.
We'll both be speaking.
Felicity King, thank you. And can I just confirm who will be speaking from Mr. and Mrs. Marsh?
Said we both will. We both have points to make.
Both speaking. Thank you.
No.
I also have David Sneed, is that correct?
Yes, hello, I'm David Sneed. I'm also a resident of Bolton-on-Dunsmore.
Thank you. And it's Mr. and Mrs. Pennington?
Yes, can you hear us?
I can, thank you, we can.
Can I want to raise a legal question, please, before you start. I and a number of other residents made a formal complaint about the behaviour of Councillor Garcia at the last meeting, because what she said and her behaviour indicated she approached the decision with prejudice and had already decided what the outcome was. I think, in my opinion, that since the complaint has not been dealt with, that this committee doesn't have jurisdiction to make this decision at the moment.
Mr. Pennington, I believe that the monitoring officer has been dealing with that. I actually had a meeting about something regarding various matters this morning with the monitoring officer, and he had no issues with this meeting continuing.
Well, I've not been communicated that, so as far as I'm concerned, my complaint still stands.
Well, so your complaint will be dealt with, but this meeting will continue today.
Well, I wish to object that it's not legal.
I will make a note of that on my records that you're objecting to that, but the meeting will continue. Is there any other residents here?
Anyone else not been identified?
Complaint against me last.
Okay. The order I suggest then is obviously as the chair will outline, is the applicant will go first, followed by I suggest Mr. Payne, followed in order by Mr. Marsh and Mrs. Marsh. Sorry, is it King? Sorry, Miss King, David Snade, and Mr. and Mrs. Pennington.
Sorry, that's rather confusing.
Sorry, what was that about Miss King? Or
sorry, is it Felicity?
Felicity, yeah, Felicity Marsh.
Marsh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Felicity Marsh and Thomas Marsh. That's correct. Yeah.
Sorry, I apologise. I thought I heard the name King as well. I do apologise.
No worries.
So yes, so if we go, once the chair outlines the procedure, the order will follow as I've just said. Once the applicant, but I will over to the chair who will outline the formal procedure for this meeting.
Thank you very much. Well, we'll start with the council agenda, item 1. Any declarations of interest from councillors? Under A, non-pecuniary interests as defined by the council's code of conduct.
No, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any pecuniary interests as defined by the council's code of conduct for councillors?
No, thank you, Chair.
And a notice under section 106 of the Local Government Finance Act 1992, non-payment of community charge or council tax.
Noted.
So for the record, that's no declarations. So we'll move on to item 2, which is application for a premises licence. So the checklist for licensing hearings is something I have here because we don't formally go through this procedure very often. But we'll start off with everyone doing introductions, which we've already done. I'll then go through what will be the procedure for the hearing, which is what I'm doing now. This is our hearings policy. Chairman should notify all parties they have an equal time to which to make their representations. So aside from the applicant, we'll be seeking to hear everyone in 5 minutes. The licensing officer will address the subcommittee and outline what today's business is. We'll then move on to the applicant speaking first. All other parties should be given an opportunity to ask questions, which they will. Any objectors can then address the committee. All parties then have an opportunity to ask questions of the objector. That will go for any objectors or consultees present, so that may be multiple people. At the end of representations, the chairman, that's me, will ask if parties have any further to add, and any parties that have anything further can speak. All parties are then given a chance, if they need to sum up their case, with the applicant going first. And at that point, we will finish and the committee will retire to make its decision on this matter. Is everybody happy with that? Does everyone understand?
Sorry, Chair, could you just clarify what the position is with time?
With time? Well, the applicant, you'll have as much time as you need to, but of course, we're all looking for simple, clear brevity to outline your application.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I was just a little bit confused by the reference to 5 minutes, but presumably, however long I take, the interested parties will have an equal amount of time.
That's after your application. Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
You happy with that?
Yes. It's just I will probably be slightly longer than 5 minutes, Chair. So I just wanted to make sure that people weren't restricted to that time.
No, the application will take as long as it takes, but hopefully we won't be taking the mickey with that one. It'll be simple and clear, hopefully. Right, so I'll hand over to the licensing officer, Emma, to outline what we have today.
Thank you, Chair. So Boughton Hall Limited have applied for a premises licence at Boughton Hall, Main Street, Boughton-on-Dunsmore. The application was submitted on the 18th of September and covers live and recorded music, late night refreshment and the sale of alcohol. We're here today because the previous meeting was adjourned following the submission of the noise assessment. This noise assessment was submitted to discharge a condition of the planning permission. So please note the following condition, R19/1429, requires discharging before occupation of the venue. So condition 12, a noise assessment shall be undertaken by a suitably qualified person, submitted in writing to and approved by the LPA prior to occupation of the development. The assessment should determine the existing background noise levels at those times of day and week that entertainment is likely to be played. The assessment should demonstrate the existing structure can adequately contain the level of noise from entertainment associated with weddings, or set suitable maximum noise levels not to be exceeded within the building, and provide recommendations on how the maximum levels would be monitored and controlled.
Thank you. Could I just ask anyone not speaking to make sure their microphone is switched off, please? Mr. Payne, you had your hand up.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Chairman. There are 2 points that I just wanted to seek some clarity on. I'm conscious that Mr. Pennington has already raised one particular issue, but of course, this hearing was adjourned in order that papers could be considered that were deposited after the hearing began. The first practical point that I would suggest needs to be dealt with is whether all parties agree to those additional documents being submitted for your consideration. You'll of course be aware of the regulations on hearings, in that any document submitted after the hearing commences must be only admitted if it is with the agreement of all the parties. So that's point one. The second point, which really arises from the licensing officer's presentation, is exactly what is being applied for here. I have an application before me which talks about live music, recorded music, anything of a similar description, late night refreshment and supply of alcohol. And some of those activities are applied for indoors, some of them are applied for outdoors, and some are applied for both. Clarity on exactly what of those applications, what part of that application, if indeed all of it or part of it is going ahead, would be appreciated.
Marion, I think that's one for you.
If we can confirm, the application is the application which is appendix to the report. I do not believe that that has changed in any way, and I'm sure actually Mr. Gregory would probably be the best person to confirm that is his application. I am sure that Mr. Gregory, as the applicant, will be going into more detail in relation to the application. The licensing officer was merely opening and summarising the things. I think you'll appreciate it was just a way of saying where we were today.
No, that's perfectly understandable. Perfectly understandable. Of course, there's the second point as well.
Sorry, I was dealing with that. If we can go around that and confirm that everybody has seen the copy of the noise report, that was the purpose of the adjournment last week, and that was to give the opportunity for everyone to have a copy of that. So if there is anybody who has an objection to that, could they make that known, and we will make a consideration of that. But that was the point of the adjournment, Mr. Payne, was to allow for that noise assessment to be circulated to all the parties.
Oh, indeed, I appreciate that point entirely. The point is, though, the regulation is quite clear that you have to have agreement from all of the parties that the document's been submitted. The point was made when the report was provided, and indeed at the hearing before, that sufficient time would be needed to consider that report. My position is that sufficient time hasn't been provided to consider that report.
So can I ask something?
I'd just like to clear up Mr. Payne's point first.
The noise assessment was, I think the noise assessment has been submitted. I believe that everybody has had copies of it. The noise assessment makes recommendations as part of the planning condition. That can be taken into consideration as part of the determination of the appeal. So I have as provided everybody is in agreement that they've had a copy of this noise assessment, I see no reason why we can't continue with the meeting.
Well, I hate to pick legal points, but I will on this particular one. It is helpful perhaps to read the provisions of Regulation 18 of the Hearings Regulations. That is quite clear, and let me read it to you. In considering any representations or notice made by a party, the authority may take into account documentary or other evidence produced by a party in support of their application, representations or notice as applicable either before the hearing, and this is the important part, or with the consent of all the other parties at the hearing.
Could I just clarify, is someone not consenting then, Mr. Payne?
What I'm saying is if you proceed with the application, there is a significant danger in that our position is that we have had very little time to consider this report.
Chair, I'll just make two points on that. The first is it's surprising that this has only come to light at 2:10 this afternoon. And the second point is that the noise assessment was produced on the Monday before the hearing. So it wasn't produced at the hearing. I'm not sure when all the parties received it, but it was produced by us on the Monday before the hearing.
So, Mr. Payne, accepting the fact that you seem to be saying that you haven't had sufficient time, what would you consider to be sufficient time?
Well, Chair, at the meeting that was adjourned, I made the point that the same amount of time that was provided for the applicant to prepare the report should be provided to the objectors to respond to that report. In essence, I think that I'm right in saying the report arrived with us on Thursday of last week. That is not a sufficient time, in my opinion.
And as I said, Mr. Payne, what would you consider to be sufficient time?
Well, Chair, I think that in order to get a consultant to look at that report, and I'm mindful that the applicant has had a consultant look at it, probably a period of about 2 to 3 weeks.
Marion, do you have a view on that?
I've taken on board what you said. The noise assessment, Mr. Payne, was submitted as a part of a planning condition. And that has to satisfy a planning condition. Planning permission and granting, subject to condition 12, was for a noise assessment to be submitted and for that to be approved in effect by the Environmental Health Office as part of the planning process. The position was that Mr. Gregory kindly notified the council that had been submitted to comply with that condition, and I think it was just before the meeting, and he wanted people to have to be able to look at that. Now that doesn't prevent the assessment, the determination of this of the decision today, because that noise assessment was submitted as part of the planning condition. If you were to choose not to accept that noise assessment, then the meeting could still go ahead, and we could ignore the planning. We could ignore that assessment completely and make a decision. The members could make a decision based on not having that noise report and make a determination of this application today. I would welcome Mr. Gregory's comments on that, please.
Mr. Gregory?
Well, I mean, I think your legal officer has highlighted the options. You could choose to disregard the noise assessment. I'd need to take instructions on how to proceed in that respect if you're minded to go down that route. Secondly, it's open to you to defer the matter to allow further period of time for consideration. But in my submission, it's not necessary because we produced the document prior to the hearing. I don't have any further submissions to make. So,
thank you, Marion.
I think Mr. Gregory, I agree with Mr. Gregory that I think that it was submitted. You can choose to, as I say, ignore the noise assessment, although it's helpful in some ways. But it is up for the members to decide whether or not they wish to adjourn and or to carry on and determine this, having noted the comments that have been made by Mr. Payne and Mr. Gregory, myself.
Okay, I'll just ask my two colleagues. Councillor Garcia.
I don't really see why we need to adjourn again. I think we've got all the detailed reports. I've certainly had plenty of time to read everything that's been given to me. And I really would like it to go ahead and be sorted out once and for all.
Councillor Keeling.
Yes, I agree with my colleague. I'm happy to go ahead if it's the opinion of the committee.
Right, well, that makes 3 of us. So I'm happy to go ahead. So I've got a number of hands that have been up for a little while, starting with Mr. David Sneed.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to point out that we have already made representation to Rugby Borough Council that there was insufficient time to consider this report. We have not had time to do so, and I would object to it being considered today.
Right. And Mr. Thomas Marsh?
Yes, I just wanted to check that if it is accepted, that it does not imply that we accept its conclusions.
I'm not sure I understood that. Could you just clarify that?
Well, we got one thing, we're tabling some report and we're arguing at the moment whether there's been sufficient time. I don't want to add to that. I think it has been rather low. It only arrived with me on Thursday. But I'd like to know if it is accepted for this particular meeting, does that imply that we've actually accepted the conclusions of the report? Because I would say I have not accepted those and I will argue against them.
I shouldn't see that it would be deemed as accepted, and I shouldn't see you in that position, no.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Julian Don Pennington have got their hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to agree with Mr. Sneed that I don't consent to this report either, since we have not had sufficient time to get advice on it.
And Mr. Palmer? Could you take your hands down as you're having the opportunity to speak, please? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to reiterate the point is that this document that we've produced is to assist with any points that have been brought to the table regarding sound, any concerns that have been brought regarding sound. It wasn't a requirement for the premises license application. It's for us to show to the local residents that what we're doing is not to the detriment of the local area. The report itself, and we've got a gentleman, Mike Stigwood, with us today who actually compiled a report. It shows that there is no impact, no noise pollution coming from the areas in which we would be holding any sort of entertainment. Like I say, if there wasn't a requirement of this premises license application, it's more for the planning. But the reason we brought it to the table was so that we could show you that we're trying to be sympathetic to the actual local residents.
Thank you, Mr. Payne.
Chair, I'm grateful. I need to correct a number of points that have been made. First of all, it's suggested that this report has been produced to discharge a planning condition. Well, the application, the document that I have before me says on it, noise impact assessment, Boughton Hall, Boughton-on-Dunsmore, Rugby, Warwickshire, in relation to music noise and the Licensing Act 2003. That's the purpose for which this report has been produced. You are, of course, in a difficult position now because the fact of the matter is, whilst the report may have been sent to the council before the hearing began, it wasn't circulated to all of the parties until after the hearing began, and therefore that is the point of submission. You have a number of people who've already objected to this report being produced, and therefore you cannot consider it. The difficulty you find yourself in now is that it sounds as if councillors have indeed read that report in advance before agreement to have it considered at the hearing. With the best will in the world, you've read the report, you've also heard the comments from Mr. Palmer, who was giving evidence about what the report said. It seems to me that you are all, as councillors, prejudiced against hearing this application, having read the report.
Marion.
I take on board what you said, Mr. Payne. However, I think the members are perfectly capable of making a decision and not considering the report if that's the way you want to go. The report was submitted in discharge of the planning condition. It might have said Licensing Act, but it didn't come to us via as part of the licensing application. It wasn't mentioned in the licensing application. It is to discharge a condition, a planning condition, which has not yet been discharged fully, because that planning condition said that it be submitted and approved by the Environmental Health Officer, who is obviously the responsible authority. That hasn't fully then, and that will be, he will be looking at that and may or may not accept the recommendations of that that report. We don't know, and nor do any of us, nor do the members know that at this stage. So we could if people don't want to accept that noise report, the meeting could go ahead. The members are perfectly capable to make the decision, step aside from what's in the noise report. It could be as part of the evidence provided not evidence, but in the application. I'm sure Mr. Gregory will want to be referred to the fact that they have gone into a noise report, and any decision could be made, determined, subject to that noise assessment being considered, and any sub recommendations once the Environmental Health Officer as responsible authority and as the Environmental Health Officer of the Planning Committee deciding if that was the appropriate way of dealing with things. That is a decision. If you don't want that report to go in, we can continue in that way. But obviously it would be helpful, but it's entirely up to you. If people are objecting to it, then we would have to take the decision that we cannot accept it as part of these proceedings today.
Mr. Payne?
Chair, I can only reiterate what I've said. I disagree fundamentally with the suggestion that this report has been produced for discharge of a planning condition. Maybe that's an ancillary purpose, but one has to just read the first few pages of the report to see why it's been produced. This is a report that should have been produced with the application from the very outset, or at least once it was known that there were concerns about sound from the premises. Those concerns were raised by Environmental Health as well as by residents. We are in a position where you've heard from, it's not just myself, but other objectors who have said that this application should not consider this report. So you are in a very difficult position, I do appreciate, and you have my sympathy with it. I am, of course, trying to consider my client's position. I'm trying to consider the situation for the council. And of course, should this matter go any further, these are issues that are of importance.
So, Marion, where does that leave us in terms of proceeding with this matter?
Mr. Gregory's got his hand up, so I would like him to have an opportunity to speak.
Let's go for that then, Mr. Gregory. Mr. Sneed, I'll be with you in a moment.
Yeah, so I mean, just to clear it up, we don't get bogged down in why the report was produced. It's clearly been produced today in support of the application and to provide comfort to local residents who were concerned about noise. We commissioned it when, or the point at which Environmental Health mentioned that it was going to be imposed as a condition. Clearly, we didn't have to produce it before the hearing. We could have let the application run its course and then produced it afterwards in accordance with the condition. We chose to be transparent and produce it before the hearing, and we also agreed to the matter being deferred last week to allow people time to consider it. Now, I think I agree with Mr. Payne in the sense that the least attractive option before you is to advise members that it can't be considered. I think fundamentally very difficult for them to ignore a noise report that they've read. So I do the least favoured option here. So I think essentially, and I can take instructions on a further short adjournment would be agreeable, and the other option is for you to proceed. But I am disappointed that it's only been raised, at 2 o'clock this afternoon when the noise report was available to everybody last week, and submissions could have been made at that.
Chair, it seems we're in a position where we have some objection. It's the least attractive option to go ahead and ignore the report. If that's the case, I appreciate what everyone's saying. I think the only possible action we can take is do a further adjournment, and it would be for the consideration of the report, but it has to be for time. We would have to be very specific on time, I feel. Obviously, it's not my decision, it's members' decision to make this. It further defers things, but you know, I do reiterate that whilst the noise assessment was kindly submitted to support the application, it wasn't part of the application. It was submitted, as Mr. Gregory says, you know, to be helpful to residents. And that had we been in the position where he hadn't put that forward, we could have determined this last week. But it's entirely up to members to make that decision.
Councillor Garcia.
Well, I just wonder why we deferred last week, because I thought the whole point of us deferring last week's was so that we had time to read the report. I just think we're going round in circles here. It seems like it's just stalling tactics to me.
Thank you. Mr. Sneed.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to reiterate again that we have already made representation to Rugby Borough Council that rescheduling the meeting today would give us insufficient time to consider this report. I have to say that we need some time to incorporate the detail of the report, which is quite lengthy, and how we should respond to it, given our own concerns about the level of noise this application is going to entail. And as Mr. Payne has already pointed out, that may well entail getting our own specialist in to review the situation. I think it really is quite an important point, and you should pay, I think, due course to the process and give us a chance to consider the correctly.
Marion.
Mr. Gregory's got his hand up again.
Mr. Gregory.
Sorry, so yeah, just in relation to the period of deferral, just to say I'd need to take instructions on that point, but it may be that Mr. Palmer would want to make representations on the length of any deferral, should you be minded to go that way. Bearing in mind that the noise report has certainly been available for a week, since last week. Everyone knew last Tuesday that there was a new noise report, so we need to factor that into any further period of deferral that's considered.
Mr. and Mrs. Marsh, could you unmute, please?
Sorry.
My apologies. I just want to highlight the fact there seems to be some misunderstanding amongst some people this afternoon. It's the difference between a request for time to read it, which is not long, and to consider it, which is much lengthier. And also to reiterate that we did not receive the report to do either thing until Thursday, which is 2 days after the meeting, and obviously a little longer by a few hours since Mr. Gregory submitted it.
Thank you. So, Marion, in summary, where does that leave us?
I think we're in a very difficult position, Chair, because we have a number of objectors to the report. So therefore, it can, we've got to accept it. We can't be considered. It would seem appropriate, I think, at this stage to adjourn for a very short time. I don't think we can adjourn. There's been a week already. Can I ask people to individually say how long they think they need to consider the report? There is nothing. I mean, the point is that each person could put their own representations in regarding the noise. They've done that. This report may go some way to address that. Any decision could be made where we can not take into consideration the report, or it could be a decision is made subject to the report, of course. But I don't think that is the way that Mr. Payne or some of the, sorry if I'm not saying all names, would want us to go. So perhaps in the light of, to be transparent, I think perhaps we might be better to adjourn for a very short period of time for people to consider that report. Chair.
So what would you consider as a very short period of time?
How long do people need?
Shall we go round and ask people following your list to go round and see?
Mr. Gregory has already said he wants to ask his clients. Yeah. Mr. Payne, how long would you be looking at?
Well, Chair, that rather depends on how soon I can have a consultant look at this report, if indeed that's the way we go. It might be helpful to perhaps get an indication from Mr. Stigwood how long this report took to produce from the date that he was asked to commence it.
Mr. Stigwood, do you want to comment? You're on silent.
Yes, Chair. Happy to comment on that. I visited on the 7th, which was the earliest date because of the poor weather. I wanted to get conditions that were good conditions for sound monitoring, i.e. low winds, low backgrounds, and therefore I visited on the 7th, and I had completed the report by the Sunday following. So I produced the report in about 4 days.
Thank you.
3 days.
Mr. Payne?
Sorry, could I just ask when you were first instructed to produce the report there?
We were instructed, I don't have those dates in front of me. We were instructed a few weeks before. A colleague was going to undertake that, but the problem we had was weather. We don't want to go out and do monitoring under the wrong weather conditions. And the first conditions that we had that were good weather was on that particular occasion. I think I said the 7th. It was probably November the 5th actually that I went, which the first day of the lockdown. Whatever the first day of the lockdown
is to go around and understand what the appropriate amount of time is. Marion, you started with your round robin. Are you still with us?
Sorry, Mr. Marsh.
Hello. Yes. Yes. I'd like to be led by the Mr. Payne. If we're going to get a consultant, that will be the limiting factor. I would like to know whether I'm able to make any submissions of my own on the noise report, because I have some serious objections to it.
I don't think this is appropriate at the moment because we're actually considering whether or not we're adjourning and going.
No, not now, but written submissions later.
Mr. Payne, you will, Mr. Marsh, you will have the opportunity at any hearing to put your own point of view across on your objections. Yes. And
can I submit any written objections?
That would be helpful.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Sneed.
Yes, I think we need about 3 weeks to consider the report.
Mr. and Mrs. Pennington?
Hang on. I'd agree with David Sneed.
Mr. Payne, you're representing four of the residents. I presume these are not the people that are speaking here as well.
No, indeed, that's quite correct. Yes, indeed. I think given the issues, it's quite clear, especially with weather conditions as they are at the moment, that a period of weeks is going to be required. Mr. Stigwood has helpfully mentioned that his report was delayed in being produced because of the weather and being able to take readings. Likewise, we may well wish to take readings ourselves. And so I do think that 3 weeks is probably a sensible period.
Mr. Gregory?
Well, I think minus the week or almost a week that the report has been in wide circulation. If we agree that Thursday was the date, that's still almost a week that it's been with interested parties. It was quite open to them to call noise consultants at that time, establish how long a report would take, and then come back to this hearing with a proposed fixed date when they could call. If and I'll take instructions on the point, we're minded to agree to deferral. I would say 3 weeks. 2 weeks would seem to be adequate.
Sorry, Mr. Gregory, you broke up there a little, but I think I heard the crucial bit at the end, that 2 weeks would seem to be inadequate.
That's right, Chair. I was just making the point that the report's been with people for a week already, at least.
Okay, Marion. Sorry, back to Mr. Marsh.
we weren't in position to have got a noise consultant within this week, so we're starting from scratch here. 2 weeks is not enough time, given the weather, as pointed out by Mr. Payne.
Marion.
I think, well, we're going to have to set up the meeting again. I think we look at a period. I take I take the point that there has been a week, well, nearly a week, when people have had the noise report. So I think if we could start looking at 2 weeks, certainly. It may well be that because of availability, we'll be looking at nearer 3 in any event anyway. But I think that initially we start looking at 2 weeks, and people can put in place as much as they can. I think the council are being more than reasonable in giving a further adjournment.
Thank you. So we're looking for a period between 2 and 3 weeks.
Chair, can we just hear, just go to Mr. Palmer for 1 second and see whether there are any further comments from the applicant?
Mr. Palmer?
I'm conscious I'm not able to take instructions in this forum.
I mean,
would it be helpful if we have a 5-minute adjournment, which will allow you to speak on the phone to your clients, Mr. Gregory, and for anybody else to speak, whoever they have. But if we literally have 5 minutes and then come back, would that be helpful? Is that possible to do?
I'm quite happy for that to take place if that's going to help the matter.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Okay, well, I'm sure you'll all be careful with microphones on and off.
Chair, is it possible for us all to have 5 minutes as
difficulty.
Thank you very much. It looks to me like everyone's back. So from where I'm sitting, then it looks like we've agreed to have a deferment, and the sticking point is sitting between 2 weeks and 3 weeks. Marion?
I believe that's the case. Mr. Gregory, if you had an opportunity to speak to your clients.
I have, thank you for that opportunity, Chair. And my client wishes to be helpful. We don't want to be particularly adversarial in relation to this matter, and we're willing to. We won't oppose an adjournment of 2 weeks from today. We consider that a week's already gone by, and we would ask that any other procedural difficulties or queries are ironed out in advance of that hearing, so that we can move on. There is obviously a desirability for expedient decision making, and these are economically uncertain times, particularly in the licensed trade. So we think 2 weeks is sufficient, but we wouldn't oppose an adjournment for that period of time.
Marion?
And one point to consider is that if, and I'm addressing this to Mr. Payne, and I hope I don't offend the others, but I'm addressing it to Mr. Payne, who seems to be going to have a noise consultant imposed. Obviously, any report will have to be submitted to the parties prior to the meeting.
Yes, you're quite right. And of course, that report is subject to the same provisions as well, that all parties have got to agree to be admitted and considered before the authority. I have taken instructions. I've been chasing, in fact, a consultant that we've used. If we're going to engage him, he says that it would take no less than 2 weeks to produce that report. I'm obviously minded, then you've got time for consideration if you want to include that as well.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes, well, it seems obvious to me there's got to be more than 2 weeks. So if it's going to take 2 weeks to make the report, there's got to be at least 3 week delay. And the weather consideration is exactly right. We don't know whether this is reasonable conditions. It doesn't model what it's going to be like in the summer at all at the moment. We really do need to allow some time for a proper report.
Just ask that should we wish to commission someone to produce a noise report, that the owners of Boulton Hall would allow us access.
Anyone want to take that one?
Mr. Palmer, I think that one.
I think I'll take the lead on this, Nick, if you don't mind. Yeah, we've got no objections to having access to the grounds with sufficient notice as to when you would be attending, and obviously if you could have, we would have a representative with us. Just to ensure, help you on the site, then I think that should be fine. But as long as we've got enough notice to know when you're turning up, then that would be fine.
Marion?
Chair, the decision, the application before you is, I think we're all agreed for an adjournment. Mr. Gregory, on behalf of his clients, has said 2 weeks. They've already had a week. They've requested 3 weeks. We have to get the report, has to be done and circulated, and they're saying that it's going to take 2 weeks. The issue, of course, is if the report's going to take 2 weeks and then we've got to actually get that to all the parties, including Mr. Gregory and his applicants and his clients, then it may be that practically we are looking at no more than 3 weeks. I think we make it 3 weeks if that's possible, but no more time, and that will be, it will, the meeting will go ahead irrespective of that 3 weeks, because there is an opportunity then for them to get the report done, get it be get to all the parties involved, interested parties, and to the applicants, and the meeting will be arranged for exactly 3 weeks from today, if that's possible. Obviously, we're down to availability of all the officers and the members.
Yes, well, I'm a reasonable man. It does seem to me like 3 weeks does seem the right sort of thing. Councillor Garcia, what do you think?
Well, I think in the interest of fairness, yes, we'll have to go along with that. But I don't think I'd like to see any more delaying tactics after the 3 weeks, because obviously they had the 28 days to start with to do the representation. I don't know how long it took them for it to come to committee. Then there was another delay, and so I think that has got to be enough time for everybody, really.
Okay, Councillor Keeling.
If it's the consensus for 3 weeks, I'm happy to go along with that.
Do you want to raise it?
Mr. Pennington, are you about to say something?
Yes, I just wish to have it noted, please, in the minutes that I object to the comment by Councillor Garcia about delaying tactics when we're following proper legal process and not delaying it.
Mr. Sneed, you got your hand up?
Yes, like Mr. Pennington, I want it noted that Councillor Garcia sees this as a delaying tactic.
Mr. Gregory?
Duly noted.
Yeah, just Chair, given that it looks like you're going for 3 weeks, could we ask for an indication as soon as it's available of the date when the noise report will be available, and we'll ensure that Mr. Stigwood or whoever we need to have a look at it can do so before the hearing.
Yeah, I think we're certainly in need of goodwill on all parties, aren't we? Okay, well, I'm quite happy for us to defer for 3 weeks. My two councillors concur with that. So, Marion, have you got any lasting points to say on a 3-week deferment?
No,
we'll go ahead.
Chair. Thank you for that. I think the members have been accommodating in giving the 3 weeks. That gives the interested parties an opportunity to get the noise report, and to get that circulated to, if they send it to the council, so that it can be circulated to all the other parties as soon as that noise report is available. But I think we've done as much as we can today. Thank you.
Mr. Gregory, you got your hand up again.
Sorry, that's an accident, Chair.
Mr. and Mrs. Pennington, you have your hand up again. You're on mute, Mrs. Pennington. You're on mute.
Sorry, that was a mistake, Chair. Sorry.
Okay. In that case, we're adjourned for the best date that we can come up with in 3 weeks' time. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.